We depend more on our home Wi-Fi than ever before. There was a time when even having a wireless router was considered a luxury. But nowadays, unless you're living in a one-bedroom apartment, a single wireless router isn't going to cut it. We have dozens of devices throughout the home, and it's just not possible to get consistent coverage to all of them with one router. Sure, you'll have connectivity, but to get the internet speeds you're paying for throughout your entire house, you're going to need a mesh system. And the market definitely knows this because it's saturated with them. There's Eero, Google, Orbi, Velop, and Ubiquiti, just to name the top players. So which one's the best, and how do you choose? Well, after tons of research and installing Orbi at several clients' houses, it's clear that Orbi is the best mesh Wi-Fi system on the market. I contacted Netgear, and they were willing to send me these devices for the purposes of this review. And in this review, we'll look at the features that make Orbi better than the competition, compare the different sized Orbi units, do before and after speed tests, and even look at the new Outdoor Orbi model. This has easily been the most difficult review I've ever had to do. I try to be really thorough in the amount of information I put forth in these videos, and Netgear is adding products and features to the Orbi line so rapidly that it's difficult to keep up. For instance, I mentioned later in the review that the USB port on the largest model Orbi system is currently not in use. And that was true at the time when I originally began the review. However, I was going through the web interface to get some screenshots for use in the review and noticed that the Ready Share printer feature had been added through an automatic software update without me even noticing. Additionally, when I first began the review, I received every model Orbi system that Netgear was currently making at the time. Shortly after that, they added a smaller router, an outdoor satellite, which we will feature later in this review, and recently they've added a router that has a built-in cable modem. All these features are good for the end user, it just makes it really difficult to summarize all of this for the purposes of a comprehensive review. But with that disclaimer out of the way, let's give it a shot and get started. Orbi's not just a wireless router, but rather it's a whole home Wi-Fi system. If you've ever used extenders or repeaters, you know how frustrating it can be to have separate network names and poor performance when you're not connected to the main router. Other mesh providers address the complexity issues, but don't focus on performance. Netgear's different though. They've been in the networking game since way back in the day, like install your NIC drivers from a floppy disk way back. So they know a thing or two about networking. For instance, each Orbi unit features 3 separate radios. One for servicing the 2.4 GHz clients, one for servicing the 5 GHz clients, and then a separate dedicated radio for communicating with each other that's 5 GHz as well. On the largest unit, this radio can communicate at speeds up to 1.7 gigabits per second. Netgear recently added the ability to be able to physically cable the units together or daisy chain them through each other. However, unless you can't wirelessly connect the satellite to the main router, I'd recommend you stick with the wireless backhaul. On the largest unit, it's almost twice as fast as the wired connection, and even on the smaller units, it's almost gig speed at 866 megabits per second. If you're not the technical type and all this talk of speeds and feeds is making you nervous, you can rest easy because Orbi is super simple to install. You connect the main router to your internet modem and then position the satellites throughout your house. If everything lights up blue after a few minutes, then you're good to go. If you don't care what your network's named, that's literally all you have to do. Each Orbi system comes prepared from the factory and is given a somewhat unique network name and a randomly generated correct horse battery staple style password that's super easy to enter and remember. Of course, you can change the network name to your own network name and password, but if you're looking to get up and running as quickly as possible, it's literally just as easy as positioning the devices and plugging them in. I would recommend you change the default admin password. That's not unique to your device, and anyone that you allow to connect to your Wi-Fi will be able to manage your system if that password's not changed. Orbi also seamlessly manages which wireless band you connect to. No more guessing which SSID you should use. Wi-Fi uses 2.4 and 5 GHz frequencies, and the super simple explanation is that 5 GHz is a faster, less congested spectrum, while 2.4 is better at penetrating walls and reaching long distances, and some clients just don't support 5 GHz. Orbi has one network name across all bands and across all devices. So if you're within range and your device supports it, it'll connect at the faster 5 GHz. And as you move out of range, it'll seamlessly transfer you over to the 2.4 gigahertz radio without any drop in your communication. The same goes for when you move from the main router to a satellite unit. The Orbi units are in constant communication with one another and will perform a synchronized handoff to make sure there's no interruption to your connection. It's similar to how Wi-Fi networks have worked in large enterprises for over a decade now, just without all the complexity. And if you're thinking this sounds like it would work well for a business, then you'd be right. For that, Netgear has the Orbi Pro. It's similar to the largest Orbi model, but with a direct focus on the needs of small to medium-sized businesses. If you're looking to blanket your business with great performing Wi-Fi for your employees and customers, then definitely consider the Orbi Pro. Orbi also takes care of automatic firmware updates. So as Netgear adds new features and functionality to the product line, those features are automatically downloaded and installed without you giving it a second thought. Netgear is also really good about listening to customer feedback and adding those features to the product set over time. Like I mentioned earlier, they recently added the ability to be able to physically cable the satellites back to the main router or to one another. And they've added the ability for the satellites to wirelessly daisy chain to one another. Many reviewers have pointed out how Netgear is not a true mesh system. However, with this wireless daisy chain feature, it now is. The satellites will dynamically choose whether to connect back to the main router or to another satellite depending on which connection is best. However, for best performance, I'd recommend you position the main router in such a way that all the satellites can connect directly to it instead of to one another. It's important to have a forward-thinking, progressive company like Netgear backing your solution without being utterly dependent on them. Many of the other mesh providers require connectivity back to the company's cloud network in order to manage the system or just for day-to-day functionality. That's obviously not ideal if the company's cloud network goes down for any reason, or if they decide they don't want to support the solution anymore going forward. Netgear only needs connectivity back to its servers to provide these automatic firmware updates and doesn't rely on the servers for day-to-day management or functionality. Netgear is a super simple system to get up and running that stays up to date with security fixes and new features, and it just works. Another great benefit with Orbi is that each unit has 4 gigabit Ethernet ports. You certainly expect the main router to have that, but for each of the satellite units to offer that as well is unheard of. So if you've got an older game console, desktop computer, or a TV that doesn't support wireless, or if you just prefer the reliability of a wired connection, the satellite offers that for up to 4 devices, or 3 if you're using one of the ports for a wired backhaul. And if you're the technical type and want to tweak things, then Orbi has a lot of options through the web interface as well. They've done a great job of catering to both the technical and non-technical customer. When Orbi first launched, it came in one size, which was really way overkill for a lot of people. They now feature many different sizes to better compete with the other smaller mesh Wi-Fi systems. Netgear sent me the small, medium, and large size kits. In addition to that, they have other configurations that come with more satellite units should the base kit not be large enough to cover your entire house. And although it's more expensive, you can separately add on satellites if you later realize you need more coverage or add on to your house. When connecting additional satellites, there's a sync button on the main Orbi unit and on the satellite. Pressing these buttons on both units causes them to connect. If the light on the Orbi satellite turns blue, then you're all set. If it's amber, then the signal is weak, and if it's purple, then it can't connect to your main Orbi router at all. The main router comes in 3 sizes. There's the RBR40 for the small and medium kits, the RBR50 for the large, and a newly introduced RBR20 that's really directly aimed at Google and Eero since it doesn't have the standard 4 Ethernet ports. The main difference between the other 2 sizes being the number of antennas used for the wireless communication between the router and the satellites. The larger unit features a 4x4 antenna array versus a 2x2 on the smaller units. That means the larger kit can communicate at twice the speed of the small and medium kits. But that speed difference only applies to the dedicated wireless backhaul since the antennas servicing clients are all 2x2. You'll mainly notice a difference if you have many clients connecting to your satellites. The RBR50 also includes 6 antennas instead of 4 to enable faster speed and longer range. It's rated at 2,500 square feet per device instead of the 2,000 square feet the smaller router's rated at. Another small difference worth mentioning is the RBR50 comes with a USB port. It's currently not used for anything, but I could definitely see Netgear enabling that port for USB storage or print sharing in the future through an automatic software update. For the satellites, you currently have 4 options. There's the large RBS50 that adds an additional 2,500 square feet of coverage and features the faster 4x4 or 1.7 gig backhaul and 6 antennas for optimal range. The RBS40 that adds an additional 2,000 square feet of coverage, and the RBW30 that's the run of the litter. It still covers an impressive 1,500 square feet, and because of its size, can be installed places where you wouldn't put a medium or large Orbi satellite. This is what comes paired with the smaller RBR20 I mentioned earlier. 2 of these paired with the smaller router makes for an impressive coverage in a small package. It doesn't have any ports though, so if you need wired connectivity, steer clear of this model. That's the main 3 indoor satellite options, but there's a new 4th model that we'll cover momentarily. But first, let's do some speed tests. I'm going to try to be somewhat scientific here and make sure that my iPhone X test device is in the same position every time, and that I baseline each test with my laptop hardwired to the main router, making sure that I choose the same test server each time as well. I currently pay for 200 meg service through Spectrum, so you can expect max speeds to be anywhere from 220 to 230. The first speed test is with my traditional Netgear router. This is an 802.11 AC device that also functions as a cable modem. It's located in the upstairs bedroom with no additional extenders or repeaters. This is a rough approximation of what the layout of my house is like. My direct wired baseline speed for this router is 237 down and 24 up. Just a small side note on Spectrum speeds. Unlike some DSL providers who quote you a best case scenario as the speed you're paying for, Spectrum rounds up your speed ever so slightly and doesn't overcommit their connections. So that's why I pay for 200 meg down and can hit speeds of 237. The wireless in the bedroom is pretty much at max speed at 233 megs. Once you go downstairs, the router begins to drop a little speed at 156 down in the living room and 162 in the kitchen. By the time you move to the guest room, there are several walls and a floor between you and the router, making the download speed only 24 meg. On the back porch, it's barely usable at 14 meg, and it really isn't usable in the treehouse at only 7 meg. For the Orbi speed test, even the smallest unit is sized for more square footage than I have, and performed very well, hitting max speeds in every inch of my house. The speeds shown here are for the more common RBR50 set though. I start with the same 237 meg baseline directly cabled to the Orbi. Speeds in the bedroom, the living room, and the kitchen are all 234 meg. I had a slight bump in the guest room to 235 meg since the satellite unit is located there. The back porch dropped more than I would expect, but was still very usable at 75 meg. And even in the treehouse, I was able to still get 40 meg. We typically like to entertain out in the treehouse when the weather's nice. And although all the different sized Orbi units will reach out here, what if that's not good enough? What if I want to stream an HD movie from the internet? Introducing the all-new Outdoor Orbi satellite known as the RBS50Y. If you spend a lot of time out by the pool, or by the grill, or in the treehouse, then this is the perfect addition for you. It's the same as the largest satellite, but in a rugged, weatherized outdoor package. It can be wall mounted like I've done here in the treehouse, or you can use the included stand as well. It features security screws to mount it to the wall mount to make it more difficult to steal. Also for security, they haven't included any Ethernet ports here, and once you connect it to your main Orbi network, the sync button is deactivated as well. It features a nice night light on the bottom that you can leave on or off all the time, or you can turn on and off through the web interface. And although it can technically light up different colors to show you the status of the satellite, you don't get to pick the color for the night light. It's always white. The Outdoor Orbi delivered very impressive speeds to the treehouse that you'd normally only expect to get in the same room as your Wi-Fi router. It maxed out at a speed of 233 meg down. I've recommended Orbi to many friends and family, and I've even installed it at many clients' houses as well. I've yet to get any negative feedback from anyone I've recommended it to, but rather I consistently hear how Orbi has solved all their Wi-Fi problems and given them faster internet throughout their entire house. One friend even went from getting no connectivity at all 2 rooms away from his router to now getting over 200 megs all the way out of his mailbox. While this review has been pretty much all positive, one thing I definitely wish Netgear would have made differently is the power plug. The large power brick should have been included mid-cord like on a laptop, or in the Orbi unit itself. Having it hang out of the outlet makes it susceptible to coming unplugged with just the slightest bump because of the size and weight of the plug. Another option worth mentioning for those of you who have kids using your Wi-Fi is that Orbi has built-in parental controls. And it integrates with Disney Circle for helping you manage your kids' internet-connected devices. Regardless of if you're using Orbi or any other Wi-Fi system, a great product for protecting your family from accidentally stumbling upon things is Cisco's OpenDNS Family Shield. It's completely free to use and it's super simple to set up. You simply point your router's DNS servers to Cisco's, and then if any device on your network requests a site that's inappropriate, it's automatically blocked. Like I said, it's free to use and it works great. I'm not affiliated or sponsored by them in any way. I've just been using it personally in my home for a number of years and have been really happy with the results. But like any parental monitoring solution, don't assume it's foolproof and make sure you know what your family's up to on the internet. You guys know how this works. A company sends a product out for review, and then the internet doesn't know what to do with an overwhelmingly positive review because the reviewer got the product for free. But keep in mind that I reached out to Netgear first after I'd installed several of these for clients who paid for the products themselves and saw nothing but amazing results. And I've continued to follow up with those clients over the past year, and they're all still super happy with their Orbi systems. I can't think of a product that I've ever recommended as highly as Orbi, and that's really saying something. Are there other products that you may find that would fit your specific needs better? Maybe so. But based off the installations I've been a part of and the limitations of the other mesh Wi-Fi systems, Orbi's the system to be. Thanks for sticking around through this detailed review. I tried to cover all the aspects that I would want to see if I were in the market for a mesh Wi-Fi system. But if you have questions that I didn't cover, feel free to leave those in the comments and I'll get back to you. If you've enjoyed this video review, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. And as always, thanks for watching. Just to give you an idea of how strong the connection is with these units, in order to achieve the amber low signal light, I originally placed the unit in the backyard by the treehouse, hidden behind a stump, and I still got great connection. Ultimately, I had to bring it beside the house and hide it behind a huge rock on its side in order to get the amber low signal light.